Alrighty, then we are recorderizing, and so this may be the last episode of Dragging Up the Past. Kind of hope not, because it's been fun. But we're gonna hit the pause button at least for now, so we can get back to the Grogcast.
Okay. Don't be hurtful.
Yeah, well, we do have other folks that want to get involved in the audio-visual stylings of Grogheads,
Very good.
and look. We're already a niche, and this is a niche within a niche of a niche. And as much fun as I have going through these things, I think our audience consists of like 3 people in the U.S., 1 person in Ireland, and a couple of people's pets. And that's
I am in love with all of our fan.
yes. So, this has been a ton of fun. I'm just not sure when we'll get back to it around the Grogcast, so we'll have to see. I also got the suggestion from someone that maybe we change it up and not just do Dragon magazines, but pull out like an old Command magazine or something. Except that I kind of like Dragon because, as we've discovered, it covers a lot of ground. It's not just some house magazine somewhere. It covers a lot of ground in the hobby games world. A lot of different genres, a lot of different types of games from lots of different publishers, and it really was that common ground for a lot of us through our early years of gaming.
I'm not entirely certain that. I was thinking of the Space Gamer might be a fun one to do or something like that. But well, that's a worthwhile suggestion. Thanks, listener, for making it.
Yeah. So I wouldn't presume that the person making the suggestion has actually ever watched the show. It may be they made the suggestion because they don't watch the show because we're doing Dragon. So
well, yeah, that's a good. No, but exactly to your point, I would certainly love to do General Magazine. The problem is, at that point, you're talking about Avalon Hill Games.
And that's it. Like the entire lifespan of the General. They occasionally had an ad for somebody else, but I don't ever remember an article in the General that was talking about anything that wasn't Avalon Hill or Victory.
I subscribed for 10 years, and I'm pretty confident that would have stood out to me had they done other than what you described.
Yeah. So anyway, we have here Dragon number 77. I'll kill the suspense. We're still in 83.
All right.
I'm not 100% sure when in 83. We can go take a look.
We'll have to find out.
Yes, we will. So we have a Harn ad inside the cover. Harn ads started to proliferate around this time. And we have ICE in their standard, first page of the magazine inside the cover ad space with the Rollmaster system.
It's interesting to note that Harn is saying that this is the dawn of a new fantasy world, so well, there we go. Now we know our friends at Columbia Games. Welcome to Fantasy Harn, which has endured admirably. By gosh, this would be, if this is roughly it, that means this would be the 25th anniversary of Harn.
Roughly, yes.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah, well, we have, so there's the regional map. There's a handful of different Harn things in print at this point. So I don't necessarily know as Harn got released in 83 initially. It's not like we don't have an internet to look it up or something.
I'm gonna. You keep talking.
But it's one of those things that game geeks always loved looking through because it was such a wonderfully detailed world. But I don't know a single person that ever actually played adventures in Harn. Like I did half of one adventure one time with somebody, but it's a fun world to read about. It is clearly more grounded in Earth world history than most other fantasy games, but it's
I'm fairly confident you're not describing that as a bad thing.
No, it's different for folks that want a low magic, more realistic look at the Middle Ages. That is certainly there. It is far less cinematic and far less cinematic and far more, realistic in air quotes, obviously, because we're talking fantasy gaming here. but the historical parallels upon which Harn draws are very obvious to folks that know Harn, that know the history. And so that's, no, it's not a bad thing at all. Um, I dare say it's one of the key drawing points of it. Did I stall long enough? Have you looked it up? When was the first Harn?
1983.
Okay, so it was. All right, so we got the 25th anniversary of Harn this year. Yay, Harn.
Go Harn.
Yeah. Go Harn or go home.
Hey.
Is your math right? We're not the 25th. We're at the 35th anniversary.
Shut the front door. Oh, Jesus. That's the kind of thing. I do that with my... As I was going to observe, I'm a junior in high school at this point. I think I'm blocking the fact that I'm that far gone from high school. You're absolutely right. Hard and 35. Good Lord.
Could be. All right, so here we have our contents and our special attraction. This is why Dragon number 77 would not pass uncovered by Dragon Up the Past. If we never get back to this, I had to make sure we got Dragon 77 in here because we have King of the Tabletop.
Aha.
We have the most almighty, awesomest Tom Wham game of all time. And we shall discuss in immense detail when we get there. We also talk about tarot cards, curses, creative cursing, not how to be profane, right? Some elemental gods, and then the Dragon Readership Survey, which should be entertaining.
And of course, we got to do the drill.
Yep.
Number one song in America, September, which we see this is 1983.
All right, so September 83. This is predating the Purple Rain tsunami that overwhelmed America the following summer. It's got to be something from the Beat It album, right?
Not a bad guess at all. But in fact, it is Annie Lennox and the Eurythmics. Sweet Dreams Are Made of This.
Really? Wow.
Yes, following up after this was, and I remember it, this was the Beat It Rained in the Spring. But yes, this week, and of course, we find out that it is Sweet Dreams Are Made of This, the number one movie, again, released in September. Not the biggest movie of the year, not even close, but it is the big movie released in September of 1983, and I did not understand why everybody was talking about this movie. I do now.
Jaws 3D. I don't know. I'm so bad on the movies from 83 to 88 because I was living in Germany, and I got them all like 5 months after you guys did here in the States.
The Big Chill.
Okay.
You have to get to a certain age to understand that. I still don't understand. I don't necessarily go to those movies. I understand the appeal of them much more now.
Yeah, and for folks that aren't quite of that age but want a similar feeling to it, the 90s also brought us what I used to jokingly refer to as Big Chill Light, which was Beautiful Girls.
Correct.
And so look, it's a fantastic flick. And one of the most underrated soundtracks out there, for audiophiles to find some truly off-the-wall tunes. The Beautiful Girl soundtrack's got a couple of really great ones on it. But a 10-year high school reunion when everybody's still sort of stumbling their way through their lives trying to figure out what they're doing, it is very definitely the Big Chill Light. So
it was quite a thing at the time.
Yep. All right. So let's take a look at where we are. We still haven't figured out how to do transparencies around the contents. That's okay.
Nope.
Kim Mohan is the editor-in-chief with a variety of folks on the editorial staff. Ed Greenwood is a contributing editor. Of note, no mention of Gary Gygax up there at all.
Run off like a dog.
All right. Just saying. We're going to skip the out on a limb and keep on moving. James Bond. We've talked about the James Bond role-playing game series a bit in the past. Somebody not too long ago had like a complete set of the James Bond role-playing game and accessories for sale on one of the Facebook marketplaces, and they
Yes.
were asking like $700 for it. And while I couldn't help but think that's a crap ton of money to spend on what was a decidedly mediocre game, he's gonna get it. Like, he's gonna get it because it's an out of print rarity at this point. So,
Well, as always, if you go to the right market, you have the interested buyer. You will be amazed what people are willing to pay for things that maybe better judgment would suggest aren't worth that much. But there you
yeah.
go.
Yeah, they're clearly not buying it for the game. They're buying it for the collectible value of the product.
Yes.
Because as a game, it's not worth that. All right. So the tarot of many things. Here's what I will say. This, for many folks, you've kind of seen tarot cards come and go in pop culture here and there. This was my introduction to the tarot in great detail. Like, up until this magazine article, I had heard of tarot cards. People had told me, "Oh yeah, they've got kind of some weird stuff on them," but I never really knew what those weird stuff kind of things were. It just wasn't anything that had crossed my mind to go investigate in any greater detail. And had I not picked up this Dragon magazine, I might not have cared until I got around to seeing Live and Let Die. When, speaking of James Bond, when I got around to seeing Live and Let Die and Solitaire's in there with all of her tarot cards, might not have cared until then. But of note, years later, when I did get around to seeing Live and Let Die on video, I knew what was going on with the tarot cards because of this article.
No, and my background is, well, it's in a lot of areas, but one of them is in the Ren Fair, and I've certainly known about the tarot for many, many years. As I believe I've shared on this show, I think that D&D players break down, human beings break down into two groups: those who will draw from the deck of many things and those who will not.
Yes.
My wife is decidedly of the type that will never. It's one of those things where if she were to encounter it in a Dungeons and Dragons adventure and say, "You see before you a deck of cards. Will you draw from the deck of many things?" she would say, "Nope," and walk right past it and never look back.
Yeah. Set it on fire.
Yeah, it is. I don't know if she wants to make the deck angry. She just never wants it to bother her.
Yeah.
So I am delighted to report, having checked this up, that someone has created online. You can have it. It's easy to Google at the webpage mithralandmages.com. There is a digital tarot of many things, inspired by this article.
Yes. So yeah, this was my introduction to it all with the with the various different, the major and minor arcana, with the different the fact that whether the card is played upright or not, or upside down, makes a difference in how it appears. One of the nice touches that I thought in here, in case the DM cannot obtain a real deck, each card has been given a number to use for percentile dice, and then you basically flip a coin as to whether or not it's right side up. And look, we sort of chuckle at that now with this sort of era of all things available at all times online. I got it. We sort of think they're always there. Look, unless you knew where to look, you weren't finding one of these, just floating around in the early 80s. And if you went into one of those stores that was likely to sell it, you sort of did it while looking around to make sure nobody who you knew saw you going in there. So, just a little weird.
And I've actually done a fair amount of looking into this because I do love games and the history of games. And there's a lot of the garbage. If you read this article, there's a lot of the garbage history that floats around it. The origins have been traced from sources as diverse as the lost continent of Atlantis and a sonnet by Petrarch.
Yeah.
Guys, no. That is not what happened. Cards were invented in the 15th century, probably coming out of Mamluk Egypt, came to us, and the tarot began to be used for divination. Wow, that's a hard word to say, apparently, in the 18th century. So steady on.
Yeah.
But it's certainly part of our. Certainly, but I guess I'm sort of a person who likes to put the deck of many things into an adventure. Whether or not the players will use it, I don't know. And it's only logical that they would use the tarot as a component of that.
let's slightly defend our author here. The origins have been traced. He does have it in quotes there. So
Fair enough.
he appears to have the same level of skepticism you do. So I do have a friend from back in middle school that, for reasons known only to him, used to carry around the magician in his wallet.
Uh-huh. Hey, whatever gets you through the day, man.
Yeah, pretty much. But it's nice because they do give you a little bit of information about each of the cards, and they give you some effects, whether you draw it upright or upside down. Whether it's reversed or not. The focus here heavily on the major arcana. The minor arcana is a few pages later. But it's a good detailed article that provides you a lot of nice information for your campaign, without straitjacketing you, and without seeming like it's just it does take up a lot of space, but it doesn't do it in a way that it feels like it's padding, and so that's nice. We have our omnipresent villains and vigilantes ad there. Let's keep going because we're going to hit the minor arcana here at some point. It jumps to page 50, and so that's when we get to the rest of it. So we'll get back there. One thing of note, it does stat out the devil of the tarot.
Which is, well, I'm glad to know he's unique.
Yeah. I do, the part that annoys me about all this, the devil fights with a claw, horn routine. Right? The devil's got to do better than dance steps. He's the flippin' devil. He's a unique creature come out of a deck of cards, and you're going to tell me, it's essentially a glorified bullfight? Come on, we can do better than this. Right? Especially if you're going to give the drawer gets 15,000 experience points. Come on, we can do better.
That's wow, what's his armor class? Oh, see below.
See below.
So you fight yourself, basically.
Yeah. The face and gender, armor class, hit points to hit rolls. So it mimics you. Right? So.
And otherwise, if you have to save against death magic, or you surprise yourself.
Yeah.
Nice.
So.
All right.
Seems like that one was less well thought out than it could have been.
It is a little underwhelming.
Yeah. So, if you're in Canada, read this ad. So, Vance, you get to read the right-hand page. The rest of us will ignore it. But yeah. Well, because Rapham were the licensed Ral Partha distributors north of the wall, and the rest of us got them from Ral Partha directly. So, but I did find it interesting. Look, I'm in Germany reading these things, and I'm finding it interesting that there's a company that is specifically that is buying ads worldwide, in a magazine being distributed worldwide, talking to one specific country. And I doubt that the readership of Dragon Magazine in Canada in the middle of '83 hit 5 figures. But I guess Rapham found it worthwhile to do this.
Sure. Yeah.
All right, the ecology of the unicorn, because we needed another ecology of article. Dragon used to run these things all the time, and I just don't know that I ever found any of them meaningful at all.
Well, and this one comes with a dedication.
Oh.
It's dedicated at the very end for Cassandra and all the others with our love. Dude, you just wrote about 30 column inches on the ecology of the unicorn. One of the most ubiquitous and well-known creatures in all of fantasy literature. And may I note, you spent the better part of 3 columns, I'm counting now, 4, 5 columns, almost 6 columns, telling us nothing.
Yeah, because it was a story.
It was a story. So, no, that article fails. Stamped F.
Yeah. And the challenge, of course, is that I'm not sure any of the ecology of stories that I read anywhere along the line, not stories, but articles, were worth the read. They I want. Here's what I want to know, though. I don't consider them a complete waste. I want to know who enjoyed these articles and who found them worthwhile, because somebody clearly did, or they wouldn't have kept running them. So who is the person out there that dug these things?
Yes.
That's the person I want to find and chat with, because I'm genuinely curious what it was about these things that made you stand up and go, yeah, I know where I got my rocks off from Dragon Magazine. I'm curious what it was about these articles that did it for you. So
absolutely.
Oh, moving on. Here we go. The Silver Dawn PBM $5,000 quest tournament.
Get you some.
The richest tournament in the history of correspondence gaming. That's what PBM was.
That was a thing.
Yeah. So, there was also Star Trek: The Correspondence Adventure.
Right as we're, I was thinking about this as I was reading a little bit ahead into this article. For those who aren't paying attention, right now we're getting very close to the Kickstarter for this amazing U-boat board game with this cardboard U-boat.
Yep.
And an app, and one guy is the captain, and the other people are crew, and you get to fight the app, and you get to be. Gaming used to suck. I'm just. There's a part. Because this just sounded like it sucked.
Well,
it just does. Sorry. It just. And for 50 cents a move plus postage.
Yeah. Plus postage. Which at the time was fairly inconsequential, but still. Everybody's talking about how Amazon killed the U.S. Post Office. I wonder if it's not the death of play-by-mail gaming that killed it.
Well, but I'll counter that. For gaming purposes, for me, it's 1983. I'm working at the Sizzler, schlepping, tubs of, I'm bussing tables and washing dishes and stuff. $7 for the rules in my first move, and then each move thereafter is $3 for Silver Dawn. That's a lot of money.
Yeah. Curses. 20 good ideas for bad tidings from our buddy, Mr. Forgotten Realms himself.
Ed Greenwood.
And some of these are pretty entertaining, too.
Forgotten Realms and a whole bunch of other stuff, may I note.
Well, yes. I mean, the dude was working for Dragon Magazine for years before the Realms started to pop out, so.
Oh, yeah. No, I was popping through a bunch of these. I loved. Which one did I see that I really, really enjoyed?
I like 13. Number 4, the reverse gravity one. You're now floating around.
Unless you avoid the fall. I did like 13.
13. Constant noise accompanies the party?
Yes.
So essentially you've got my daughter along on the trip.
Yeah, imagine trying to sneak through a dungeon. And I imagine these as being wacky noises.
Yeah.
Here, or what have you.
Yeah, it's the equivalent of dragging a bored 7-year-old around with you. So.
Yeah, so this is fun. I love things like this because they give you creative ideas.
Yeah.
I don't know as I'd roll on a table, but they're good ideas.
Yeah, well, and I think going back to what we discussed before, you don't necessarily have to roll on the table to come up with the curse, but right. If you're using this list as inspiration, okay, this item's going to have this one, and this item's going to have this one. That would be fine. One charge is lost from a magic item, so sort of poof, and you lost one of your wishes out of your ring. So that's those are kind of nice. All right, Starfleet battles. How many of them you got?
What? Well, this is easy because this is evidently early in the going.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got this is 3 books. I've got all 3 of these. Man, please. What's funny here is because I've been cheating. I've been looking ahead. This is good, folks. Stick a pin in this. Remember that we are looking here at the boys from Amarillo, Texas, and Task Force Games. Their book, which is definitely not Star Trek. Remember, not Star Trek. Because this is going to be great. But no, this is still one of those. Oh, sure, you want to play Starfleet Battles any freaking day.
Yeah, yeah. And of note, the boys from Amarillo, Texas, are still going strong.
Yep. No, they are a wonder of the modern world. I mean, because those who have watched them play, there's no production values of any kind.
Oh no.
It's a Kazinti or an Enterprise or a whatever silhouette on a chit. Some guys push it farther and use one of Luzacci's models or one of the, what were they, micro machines that came out a little while ago on a slightly bigger map.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, there's nothing there. It is all in the gameplay, and it is pure. It is Star Trek, and it is great.
Yep.
If you haven't, maybe I've never said it before. If you've not played this game, I don't care who you are not a proper grog. You're just not.
My one turn through Starfleet Battles was probably around the time this magazine came out, and I'm just not enough of a Trekkie that it was something that I felt like I had to do. So.
Well, this is the other thing though, and we've never talked about it in our sequence here. There's a thing called lifestyle games.
Yeah.
And there is no doubt that SFB is one of them.
Yep.
If you want to buy everything SFB, it's page after thousands of page.
Yeah.
And
buy a pair of bookshelves to hold it all.
Yeah, and it's like Advanced Squad Leader.
Yeah.
And that was really the only thing, I think, that kept me from plunging into it utterly. Because it's not so much that I'm not a Trekkie, because I'm a huge one. But it was more, I love games too much. And there is just no universe in which I'm going to commit myself to one game.
Yeah, yeah.
And the guys that I played with up here in Milwaukee, they are still the ones who, if you go to Gen Con and play the super big Starfleet battle games, they're the ones running it. They've never stopped.
Yeah.
It's their thing. Love them, played with them. I can't commit myself that way.
Too many other things you still want to play.
Yeah, I'm not done. Oh, well, I've learned Starfleet Battles. I'll never play another game.
Yeah, yeah. So, hey, look, Fantasy Games Unlimited ads. Of note, the Companions ads over here, I don't remember if we've talked about these or not. They were a little pricey because they were $8.50 at your favorite game store. That's because they ran in print runs of maybe 100, 150 or so. These guys were clearly working off of photocopies. I have Brotherhood of the Bolt here in the game den somewhere. I would have to go digging around. And at one point, I did own Streets of Gems. I have no idea what happened to it. If I sold it, traded it, gave it away, but I don't have that one anymore.
And what's the ad right underneath it?
Star Trek.
Wait a minute. That's the same ship I see above, except now our friends at FASA, Chicago, Illinois, have bought the rights to use the actual name.
Yeah. Yep. And not just calling it Starfleet stuff.
Right.
All right.
Now it's Star Trek.
Let's go screw with the players. Nasty additions to a DM's arsenal. Some of these are quite awesome. I don't know if you've ever read through this.
I have.
The ring of gaseous form. Right? So you get to turn into gaseous form to, float around and like sneak through cracks in walls and stuff. How do you take the ring off?
Right.
The medallion of protection from thieves, which is great until you need your thief to pick the lock to get into something. So, my favorite was over here. The arrows of conscientious objection. That just the name alone tells you everything you really need to get the joke. But yeah, they transmute themselves to look exactly like the other arrows. However, when you fire, it will vanish only inches before striking a hostile target.
I would be interested to know how far back the legacy of the cursed object goes. Because certainly by the time I was heavy into role-playing in the 80s, they were already there. we were no longer looking at just the +1 sort of striking or whatever else may have you. It was, in addition, the absurd items. The crossbow bolt that made whatever you shot love you.
Yeah. Probably
That stuff.
the first time a DM was sitting down plotting an adventure while watching a Bugs Bunny cartoon. That's probably where it happened.
That's as good a suggestion as any I've heard.
Yeah. The Elemental Gods, a 4-part approach to campaign deities.
There you go.
Well, what's nice about this is that we're breaking out of the Hellenistic mythology model of gods out there, that everything's got to follow some kind of mythology, or else you're playing sort of a proto-Christian model, because how dare you call Zeus a god, kind of a thing. And so the idea, what's interesting, one of the best parts in here is actually this piece over here, the nature of religion and developing religion within a culture and a campaign using elemental gods. It must be remembered at all times that the gods are real and the people know it. So the idea of sort of what is religion is something that gets hand waved over quite a bit. Why do the people believe what they believe? In order to get to the point that the gods appear in a campaign world and they matter. This article, while we can kind of roll our eyes and go, yeah, okay, they were just looking for a new way to put religion into the game, the interesting thing is there's some thought behind why this religion in this way.
Well, and one of my favorite sets of miniature rules, period, is Hordes of the Things. The fantasy variant for De Bellis Antiquitatis DBA. 15 millimeters essentially, 12 elements, 12 bases aside, and army lists coming out of your ears.
Yeah.
And one of the issues that they raise is one of the units they have is God. They have a God unit. And that's a legitimate unit on there. But they make very plain, just in the opening text, that they're not talking about the ethical deities of the great monotheistic religions. They're talking about those of antiquity. And I've always found that a useful distinction. I've never particularly had a problem with it. I was struck later in life when I was told by friends that, yeah, they had a problem explaining that, yes, we are playing with gods, but we're not talking about, for want of a better phrase, God capital G.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what I like about this, and they fully admit here, look, these are some house rules run amok here, right? Our local D&D gaming group has developed a pantheon based loosely on the 4 elements. This is breaking the mold of your, lowercase g gods of antiquity. This, to my knowledge, there's no real historical parallel to a god of the elements the way they approach them here. I just, this wasn't ever going to make or break a campaign for me, one way or the other. But it was interesting in that we're now breaking out of the mold of sort of obviously running with somebody else's repackaged history, and we are trying to blaze new trails, even on a relatively minor side trek like this, for how can we do something different with these fantasy games.
Sure.
And that's a neat way to approach it. And it's smaller articles like this that made Dragon worth reading through all those years. This is never going to show up in a greatest hits, but it was a fun read during the month in which you owned this magazine until the next one showed up.
Sure.
Because we couldn't just all get online at any moment and have, information overload drinking from the fire hose there. All right, so here we got some Ral Partha minis. Going to zoom in over here real quick. So, how many of these boxes did you own from the best of Ral Partha?
Ooh, that's hard.
You talk about it and fill space for a second. I'm going to walk across my room here real quick. So Muse on the best of Ral Partha.
I am looking at these. Whew. I think I had all 4. I think I have all 4. What am I saying? I don't get rid of things. That's part of my problem. I'd like to say it's a mental illness. But back in the day, this was the closest you had. This is the best ability you had to give your. We wanted a little more reality than just being on a sheet of paper.
Yeah.
Than just being sketched out on the back of your Trapper Keeper.
Now I needed to walk over to the shelf on the wall and go see which of the boxes I still have. I still have on my shelf the box for the Best of Ral Partha. It's the Adventure Fellowship, which I think in here is the yellower box because it's a beige one that I have. And but I still have the box bought when around the time this magazine came out. So I have a box on my wall that's 35 years old, which just makes me a nerd. But it
you see the St. Michael Angel on the right?
Yes.
When I was in undergraduate, I did a student video of Dante's Inferno, and that angel showed up in the video.
Gotcha.
Oh,
so wait, we're talking when you were an undergrad. So did Dante give you the script?
That's not kind of
you. I believe the Adventure Fellowship actually included the figures in positions 2 and 4 here. The wizard and then the dude with the flying axe. I think those were two of the ones in the box that I had there. The frustration that I always had with the minis that you were able to buy for all of the different games out there, and it was a frustration I had up until the summer of '88 when we stopped in London on our way back to the States, and I was able to buy a couple of Warhammer Army boxes. You never had enough monsters. You always had like 300 different, various and assorted, really cool player characters, but when the horde of kobolds showed up, we ended up using like Russian infantry units from a Stalingrad game just to have enough chits to put on the map.
Are you some kind of genius? I mean, are you some kind of savant of marketing? Clearly you must be, because all the people that have issued figure sets, plastic, resin, metal, what have you, over the past 40 years, why has nobody figured that out?
No idea.
That is, and I will tell you, the one group of people, and I almost hugged them at Gen Con when I saw this, they went into the Star Wars collectible miniatures game, and they pulled out all the common stormtroopers and sold them in Chinese takeout boxes.
Squads of stormtroopers, huh?
For an aggregate price, I think, of less than $1 each. I think I bought 6 of these Chinese takeout boxes. Because, for God's sake, if I want to do a miniature game of Rebel heroes, Jedi, against Stormtroopers, I need 4 freaking Jedi, but I need 1 billion Stormtroopers.
Yeah, exactly.
And yet, for some reason, every miniature game thinks I need them in roughly equal proportions.
Yeah.
It just, that fills me with rage.
No,
you're so right about that.
I really think you could get away with doing, monster packs of here's the orc squad, right? One hero-looking orc, one boss-looking orc, one sort of commander-looking orc, and then 8 just random orcs. And, maybe 4 each of 2 different poses, but now I've got a bunch of orcs that I can use for the inevitable orc battle in the middle of my adventure somewhere. So,
yes,
definitely needed. All right, new game with a familiar name. Here's our buddy Frank Mincer, who is back in the public consciousness thanks to his version of the BECMI D&D that was used in the Stranger Things TV series. Not only that, but I don't know if you ever saw it, Frank Mincer had put out sort of a public call for, hey, I'm the guy that edited together the version of the game that they're playing in the show. I'd be happy to show up on set and run a session of the game with the kids. So, but this is This summer and fall, TSR will release the newest version of the D&D game, revisions the current basic and expert sets. Why are we doing this again? What are we changing? One of the things that he's talking about here is that this is the final evolution of the BECMI series that culminated in the rules cyclopedia that for a lot of us old timers is the better set to play. This is the one we would rather do.
This is, I mean, I will always be first edition first. But I very much appreciate mine is autographed by Frank. Okay? Got him up at Gamehole Con here in Wisconsin. And Redbox D&D is still the second best. And in my heart, that's still pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah. A big part of my affinity for this is that the Frank Mincer edition of the BECMI series is completely intertwined with the Mystara game world, which is my preferred game world as well. So when you combine those two, and you have kind of the only game world that was ever built around the BECMI series, but you have the elements of Mystara throughout the rules themselves. The two are just so tightly tied together that it's almost impossible to separate them. And so you've got the combination of preferred game world with preferred game system, and that's just that's where my heart is in the D&D world. So that's where I am. That's where I would rather be. So he talks a little bit about some history here. Enough of the history. Why another edition? Simply, the previous editions were not revisions; they were new attempts at doing this, and so this is something that they wanted to put together and redo it. Second, you can start playing without learning the rules.
Well, let's face it, that's still the way many people play.
Yeah. And let's be honest, that's every video game player ever. Right?
Sure.
Do you know anybody that sat down and read a 158-page manual for how to play the Civ game before they started playing the game? Not a one.
Never for Civ. Never for Civ. For most of my war games, yeah, because I think that's part of the fun. But yeah, for a game like Civ or D&D or whatever. Besides, I will not say there is no one, because that's absurd. But how many people really have made careful study of the rules of first edition or even Redbox?
Yeah. Yeah.
You grab what you need, you use what you need, and when something comes up that you're like, how does this work? You go find it.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
but no, this was a pretty cool piece of history.
Yeah. And so this is Mincer telling you here's what's coming up, and here's a little more about it. And so he talks about, the basic game is going to be out. Here comes the expert game. And so that's all the B and X modules located on the territory map, and future modules should all fit nicely. A ready-made campaign. They've already got several of the X series plotted out where they're going to start building off of the Isle of Dread map.
Right.
And so they're going to take from Isle of Dread and build off of it. Now, here's what they've got. Now I'm working on the rest of the system, planning and outlining what is to come. Companion, Masters, and the old Gods, Demigods, and Hero book is due for a revision 2. That's what became the Immortals set down the line. And so that's, they don't really talk about the Immortals set specifically in here, but that's what grew out of those Gods, Demigods, and Heroes piece later.
There are two things here that I really want to stress. First and foremost, basic D&D, which is what this refers to,
yep,
remains an excellent game.
Yes.
And one of the most grievous mistakes people make is that you necessarily need to ever play anything else.
Yeah.
Basic D&D today, right now, is a great game. Play it, enjoy it, love it, and if you never move past it to expert or anything else, you're playing Redbox Basic is amazing.
Yeah.
Play it tomorrow. Seriously. It'll hold up against 5th edition. It'll hold up against anything.
Yeah.
But then
here's the caveat: it holds up against anything until you get outdoors.
But it's not intended to go outdoors.
Exactly.
And how come you got to push the button? Go back. Go to the last paragraph of this article.
Yeah.
It speaks to exactly what you're talking about. But for now, just sit back and let your imagination run.
Yep.
Your character stands atop a grassy hill. ... The magic user has memorized her spells, and she says she's ready to go. A dangerous dungeon entrance gapes at you from the mountainside nearby, and inside a fearsome dragon awaits. That is the guts of D&D.
Yep.
And the outside stuff is connective tissue. I go from here to here. Oh, I have a fight. Oh, I have a random encounter. Whatever. I get to the Keep on the Borderlands. I get to the Isle of Dread. But it's in those dungeons that this game lives. It is a great game. It's a seminal game that has not changed in 35 years.
Yeah. Yeah. We've talked about the Lost Worlds game books. We've made fun of the Fantasy Games Unlimited ads. Here's the figure feature. This was kind of cool because we're getting away from just fantasy figures at this point. So here's a line from Villains and Vigilantes. And what's cool about this is an issue or two earlier from Dragon, there was the ad for these figures that included the pencil sketches of these guys. So now you get to compare the pencil sketch to what the figure actually looked like. And again, we've got gray lead on black background. It's kind of annoying, but that was the state of the art at the time. But we've got our superheroes. We've got our English Civil War. You go, Jim.
Well, look, I mean, you see who this is. This is Essex.
Yep.
And Essex is one of the great British standards. And by the way, you notice who's distributing them?
Yeah.
The writer. That's a house, folks. I will guarantee you that is being distributed out of someone's home in New Berlin, Wisconsin, just a couple miles from where I'm recording.
Yeah. Yeah. We've got the Call of Cthulhu guys here. And the Gentleman Adventurer with Pistol and Whip. I wonder who that's supposed to be. So, over here on our other page, there you go. There's your Wrath of Khan box.
$10.
All in dress uniforms. We've got our swordplay figure line from our boys down at Task Force, down in Amarillo, with the Musketeers. And then down here we've got the rest of the Cthulhu critters from this side of the page. So there's our other Cthulhu critters. So yeah, this gets us away from sort of pure fantasy. This is not just D&D figures anymore, right? We're now branching out. We're showing you a variety of other figures, which is cool.
Yeah.
Some top secret questions. We're going to skip right past those. Why? Because we've got King of the Tabletop.
There it is.
Now, I've written an ode to my love of King of the Tabletop in a Tracer Rounds column before. Here's what I will tell you. This was my first 4X game. This is the game that started me on my love affair with 4X games. This game was a 4X game before Alan had coined the 4X game term. Our boy Alan Emmerich, who now runs Victory Point. But before 4X was a thing, 4X was a game, and we didn't call it that. This was awesome. Fantasy game played with a large assortment of cardboard tiles. You begin as a landed aristocrat in a strange kingdom, and you hold great territories, land, and guard them with large armies that defy description. Not really, because we do, in fact, describe them on the next few pages. But your goal here is to build a kingdom, and you can win in any number of ways. Stop me if this doesn't already sound like something we've talked about before. There's a sequence of play, the prestige. You notice one of the things that doesn't come out the gate, how do you win, right? We should probably have organized this so we know how to win right at the top of the whole thing. Where do we go? We're still special characters, magic. I want to get to how do you win? How to win. Here we go. The moment anyone has 30 prestige points and finishes a grand monument, or you can kill everybody else, one or the other. So there are some optional rules that you can put in play there as well. But this is what you had was you had terrain tiles, some gold pieces, some special character tiles, your different fortifications, and then the playing deck that had your cities and villages and mines and magic items and treasures. So, did you ever play this one?
The question is, well, I mean, I played this to death, but not under this name.
You played it under Kings and Things.
Correct.
The later republishing of it.
Right. And this becomes very quickly Kings and Things.
Yeah.
And there's a very, very interesting story, which we won't go into here, about how the authorship of this game went through a number of permutations.
Yeah. I will tell you, my total number of plays of this version with the original pieces that I cut out of this issue of the magazine easily runs into the hundreds. Maybe north of 500. This was, for the better part of 6th and 7th grade, this was lunch. Right?
All right.
This was what we did at lunch until they kicked us out of the cafeteria and made us go run around the playground for a little bit before we came back in for the rest of the afternoon. And when we were in that gap, but when it was dark too early to really run around outside too much after school, but ski season hadn't quite kicked in yet, this was after school as well. We played this a lot. A lot.
Now, and so you're okay. So you said you play it out of this form.
Yes.
What have you played Kings and Things?
I've never played Kings and Things. Never done it. Never done it.
I found these rules. I have played this set. I did not have it. A friend of mine did. I found the rules unbearable. How did you not house rule certain things?
There were a couple of things that we did here and there, but not much. I mean, we played it fairly well stock. Now again, 6th and 7th grade, you play stuff stock. You don't mess with it too much.
Right, because that could cause fights.
Yeah. The land auctions we weren't ever really fond with because the land auctions always seemed to get a little sort of screw you kind of a thing. And so if you didn't pay for stuff and things ended up going on an auction somehow, we ended up like drawing chits to see who ended up buying the thing. We did house rule a couple of the combat pieces, mainly to make the battles move a little quicker because otherwise they really sort of devolve into risk. So we did tweak those a little bit. But the key thing in all of this is this was the first game that I ever played in which you were building a kingdom through any number of various ways in which you can try to build a kingdom. You were doing things from different angles. You could try and kill a whole bunch of people, or you could build a bunch of stuff. You could chase money, or you could chase a big army. There's all different ways in which you could do things with this game. And so we're just going to jump to the end here. Here are the pieces themselves. This is at the end of the file that we're using here. But this was the centerfold of the magazine so that you could cut it out and play with it. And so every one of the different colors had a couple of really big critters on it and a whole bunch of minions towards the end there. You had some flying stuff. Stop me if this doesn't sound the least bit familiar. You've got swamps, you've got forests, you've got plains, you've got mountains, you've got flying guys that can fight other flying guys or can fly right over everybody else. You've got some folks with some first strike ability. You've got some folks that can shoot from a distance. You've got the white knight, the black knight, the green knight. Wonder what Richard Garfield was playing as he started to imagine the universe of cards that became Magic the Gathering.
Sure. Well, I mean, Kings and Things it's got an interesting history, even in terms of its reviews.
Yeah.
If you look at Kings and Things on Board Game Geek, it's not well reviewed.
No.
It falls decidedly into an average range.
Yeah.
And everybody gets frustrated because it doesn't match up with contemporary gaming standards. You know, I guess I would like more credit given to games that created whole other genres.
Yeah.
This game is Heroes of Might and Magic. There is no Heroes of Might and Magic without it. I'm not sure that I've always been curious to know if the people who did the Settlers of Catan, were familiar with this game.
Well, show up at Essen one year and ask him.
I probably should, and again, games inspire each other. That's not to accuse people of copying or anything like that.
Yeah.
But when you draw the tree of gaming, surely you have to draw it down to Kings and Things.
Yeah, somewhere in there, I would suspect it needs to appear. But yeah, this was, again, going back to this was my introduction to 4X gaming, and it was a crap ton of fun. I enjoyed the hell out of it.
No, it's a legend.
Yeah.
There's simply no doubt.
And well deserved. Now I got to jump back through to where we left off in the middle of the pages here. So yeah, you had the player mats. One of the nice things in the way that they laid out the magazine is every one of the playing mats had an ad on the back of it, so you weren't losing anything important when you cut out the play mats. You notice all the play mats are on the right side.
Well, and I was interested in this. I knew that this came out of the Dragon. I think I read this, but I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But I will say I would love to have seen the conversations that took place within the environs of TSR as to how we're going to do this. Because this was, in its time, fairly remarkable logistical challenge.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Look, this was a blast. We all had the little 3x5 note cards that we used to prop our hand up with.
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah. No. I mean, I'm a well-known. I've written about it on the Grogheads. I'm a huge fan of Richard Borg's Commanding Colors, which uses a card system. Sometimes you have a big hand of cards. I have folded up more than my share of 3x5 cards and shown my son, yeah, that's how we did it. And I can't believe I didn't learn it from here.
So, yeah, King of the Tabletop was a great 4X game. This is where a lot of early 4Xing sort of inspired folks. The idea of having sort of heroes on the battlefield in addition to your standing army was kind of a cool thing. Something Risk still needs to pick up 35, 40 years later. But something, as you mentioned, Heroes of Might and Magic does that. Look, the Warlock 4X game that came out a couple of years ago, we awarded it the Order of the Hex from Grogheads. It's it's a spiritual descendant of this.
Yes.
So, here's what your playing deck had, and one of the things I will admit that I house ruled, not that I house ruled, that I created, just because I wanted the pun in there, and it took like 3 plays through before anybody got the pun. In the Green Army, I created, in addition to the 2 walking trees that were rated at 5s, I created a handful of baby trees that were all rated at 1s, so that I could put a whole bunch of them out there together and have the infant tree core. And
oh, good Lord.
6th grade me thought that was a genius move. 6th grade fellow players took like 3 or 4 times playing it to finally catch on to the joke.
51-year-old me is offended by your joke.
So, but yeah, here we go. It's Tom Wham and Robert Kuntz, and all kinds of development, playtesting, and other venerable aid.
Dave Trompier.
Yeah.
Who has, who gave, I don't, have we had a moment for Dave? in doing all this?
Probably not, because Tom Wham usually did his own artwork.
Yeah. Dave is one of those guys. There are so many pictures of our childhood that we owe to Dave. None greater than the party prying the eye out of the idol on the front cover of the first edition Player's Handbook.
Yeah.
That's all Dave. And if you follow Dave's story, it is amazing. He vanishes. He designs so many incredible things and then vanishes. Shows up as a cabbie in the Pacific Northwest, only to pass away just a couple of years ago. And I made the comment to some friends of mine, my D&D group in high school. God almighty, how many times did we draw out Dave's stuff on the back of our Trapper Keepers?
Yeah.
He was no great artist, don't get me wrong. I'm not deluded. But he will always have a special place in my heart and in my head. So
well, there's a difference between being good and being important.
Absolutely. Yes. So, yes.
Also of note, take a look at who's on the playtest list here.
Oh my goodness, I was looking at that. Yeah.
And look, this is a who's who of who was running TSR in the early '80s. Love them or hate them, these guys. This is who made things go. Right. This is Brian Bloom and James Ward and Jim Pierce and Ernie Gygax and Jeff Perrin. I mean, this is them.
Well, and to the earlier point, I would love to know how this, was this lying around on the table at TSR for weeks on end as they got together and played it? I don't know.
I don't know, but next time I talk to Bruce, I'll ask him, because Bruce is one of them in here as well. And
that'd be neat to see.
Look, I'm sure somebody's probably rolled their eyes in the back of their head so many times they got stuck with as many times as you and I name check people in here, but I do legitimately correspond with Bruce semi-occasionally, and we've had him on the Grogcast, and he was the shepherd of the Mystara game world for all those years. That was, my true gaming love there forever. So, when I got a chance to connect with Bruce socially, I absolutely dove right in. Who wouldn't want to be able to socially connect with the heroes of their childhood?
Sure.
So, we get accused of name checking people probably about as often as we should be accused of it. Let's be fair.
Fair enough.
But yeah, I'll ask Bruce if he has any recollections of this next time I have a chat with him. So yeah, this is the reason I wanted to grab Dragon 77 to make sure that we got this in, not knowing what the future of this whole web series was gonna entail.
Full credit and love.
All right, so we're back to finishing up the tarot deck with we kick into the minor arcana here and start counting our way through. Look, let's face it, whoever put this together did a significant amount of detailed work for all of these things, because they give you every single card's effect and its reversed effect.
Yes.
They put a lot of work into this.
Full credit.
Even if they were plagiarizing half of it from somewhere. They still had to piece it together. Palladium books, famous for the riff stuff, lots of weapons books, but here they get historical on us. Now I'm curious, I would like to know who ever actually owned the Valley of the Pharaohs. I've never found some. I've seen it on shelves in stores on occasion over the 35 years. I've never, ever known anyone who owned it.
Oh, this is one of those that, yeah. I mean, you would love to have been in the concept meeting where they say, what we're going to do is we're going to do a book about one piece of the long reign of pharaonic Egypt.
Yeah.
Particularly the reign of Thutmose III. Booyah! And have everybody else in the room go, oh yeah, let's do that.
Well, look, it's Palladium, right? I mean, it's like a one-man show, so unless he's having a meeting with a couple of mirrors in the room, it's not really a multi-headed conversation here.
Fair enough.
Somebody brought this to him, said, hey, I got this idea, and he said, okay, let's run with it. And that was, That was probably where it all went. I'm again, I've seen it, maybe 3 times over the years because I'm that weirdo that used to look on the used game shelves, the small press game shelves for stuff I'd never even heard of before, which is why I have a copy of Swordbearer here at the house somewhere. But and I'm the only person I've ever known who's owned Swordbearer. Um, the but I've never known anybody who owned this one, and I never could bring myself to buy it.
Yeah, I got nobody.
Your dragon hunt is over for only $10. I always thought this was a pretty badass looking ad.
Agreed.
Right. The death dealing black knight. I mean, that guy just screams anti paladin right there. With the dragon chained up. I'm
going to try not to hold that against you.
It looks cool.
I love paladins.
I know you do. So, all right, we're still going with the tarot, and it's going to go for a while. But let's take a look at our Dragon Magazine readership survey. What were the things they cared about?
Right. I get to ask you the questions.
Do you want me to answer them now or at the time that I was...
1983.
Okay.
Here we go. You, Brant.
Yes.
How old are you?
83. I'm in the A range still.
A. I know your sex. You have
still A.
you have completed.
I'm in A.
Education.
This was 6th grade for me.
How many years have you played role-playing games?
I was in D. No, I was in C. Started in 4th grade, so this was starting my 3rd year of role-playing.
How many types do you play?
I was probably in the B or C range.
Okay, so you got quite a palette there. Okay.
Well, because we spread out a little bit. So, one of the questions there is, when we're talking types of role-playing games, are we lumping RuneQuest and Tunnels and Trolls and D&D all into one thing?
Yes.
And that's fine. Then it's probably closer to B than C. But at this point in time, I had played all 3 of those. I had played Gamma World. I had played James Bond. I had played Top Secret. And I don't know as I've played Chivalry and Sorcery yet. And T2K is still another year away from release. So that I'm probably in the 4 to 5 range there. Because, I hadn't tried Traveler yet, because that was after 84. But I tried a bunch of different stuff at the time. So.
All right. So I'm gonna. Now this is the truth telling part. How much money do you spend in a year?
Well, hold on. We skipped over 6.
Okay.
Separate occasions in a month. Yep. I probably marked E, and I wasn't lying.
All right. 9 or more. How much money do you spend in a year on role-playing games and accessories?
Do I spend, or do other people spend on me? Because again, sixth grade me is still getting a bunch of this stuff for like Christmas and birthday presents.
All right. Let's take the
latter. Probably the C range at this point, and that's primarily because things were fairly cheap back then.
Modules and supplements?
Okay. Sorry, I was adding that all together. So new games, probably B. Modules and supplements, probably B. But on aggregate, this is going to add up to C. For figures and accessories, probably A, because there weren't a lot of them around to pick and choose from.
How'd you get your dragon?
Off the newsstand. I did not have a subscription.
Okay. I had a subscription. How much of each Dragon magazine do you read thoroughly? That's a dumb question.
Yeah.
I object to question 11.
Yeah. A, multiple times. So.
Right. I love the fact, how many people did you pass it along to? I actually think that's a slightly dumb. I don't think it counts if all you do is go, hey, dude, check out article on page 32. This is more, how many do you pass it along to read the whole thing? That, too, is a dumb question. No damn body.
Yeah, it's mine.
A.
So, yeah.
Oh, man, 15. Oh, man. Oh, sorry, 13.
hold on, 13. I am sitting 20 feet from a box of Dragon magazines.
What kind of an ignorant question is that?
Not only that, but I have 2 copies of this one in that box. One uncut, the other one's the one that I cut up back in 6th grade to play.
What a dumb question. You are not a gamer. Give me your card. Get out.
Yeah, E was the one that was completed by the gamer's mom.
Yeah, get the actual heck out. 14. Do you ever buy product? Well, sure. I don't know if I buy them because they're in Dragon, but
yeah, absolutely.
How do you rate Dragon? That's irrelevant.
Well, so for me, the challenge there is, I wasn't able to get my hooks into any others.
Oh, really?
No, because
I was subscribed to Wargamer by that time.
Well, the challenge that we had is they weren't carrying any of the others on the newsstand over in the Stars and Stripes bookstores in Germany where I was living at the time. So while I had friends that had S&T or friends' parents who had S&T or Wargamer subscriptions or the oddball Space Gamer, Fantasy Gamer copy that would show up somewhere along the way, it wasn't anything that we could reliably get with any consistency without subscribing.
Okay.
So now I get people are sick of hearing me talk about the fact that I was in Germany in the 80s, but that's the reality of where I was for 5 years. Right through middle school there, my dad was stationed in Germany, and so we had a limited palette to choose from. We basically had what either the Exchange or the Stars and Stripes bookstores would stock or what somebody would send us from the States. We could order stuff, sure, but it's you're always more reluctant to order game stuff completely sight unseen. And so that, the other problem that you had is how much of the game's universe was unable to afford to even advertise in Dragon at this point in time. So you had no idea what you were getting into. So if we could get it off the newsstand over there, hell yeah, we grabbed it. Occasionally, you'd have the one-off German toy store downtown that would carry stuff because at the time, most German folks started learning English fairly early in school to the point where they could use American, English language D&D products that you could find an oddball something here and there. But we had a much more limited supply than you guys did. So, especially you living up there in the cradle of role playing. So
that's true. That is true.
On average, how many books do you read a month, F?
Well, let's see. Let's see. A, B, C, D. At that point,
D, E. There were a lot of baseball cards and comic books floating around.
Yeah.
Not a lot of photography. Science projects when they were assigned.
Sure.
Lots of H and I, a little bit of J because I was living in the Alps for a while there, and hell yeah. Sports, lots of soccer.
J and K, camping, never. And cycling, do you mean riding my bike? Sure.
Yeah. And that was, again, that was every middle school kid out there because just like the kids in Stranger Things, that's how you got around.
Yeah, I just think that cycling, to me, that's almost like George Carlin's point about swimming not being a sport.
Yeah.
It's a way to prevent drowning.
Yeah.
It's like, no. Cycling wasn't a sport. That's how we got from place to place.
Yeah, it was a mode of transportation.
Yeah.
And I always...
Do you ever use a computer for game playing? What a question.
Well...
Imagine, kids, there was a time when we asked that question.
So, at the time, no, because we didn't own one yet.
Oh, hell to the yes, I was playing games. Oh, yes.
Yeah. Well, we got one of the 128K beige box Max in early '84 when my dad was working on his master's thesis.
I was on a Commodore 64.
Yeah. As was every friend I had, and I was pissed that my dad didn't buy one because I wanted to play games like them. So here's one of the questions, though, that applies to both 18 and 19. I wonder if they had yet made the mental distinction. Does the Atari 2600 count as a computer for game playing? See, today we draw the distinction between consoles and computers.
I'm going to say they're drawing that distinction because this is a Dragon marketing thing.
Yeah, but they never ask about consoles anywhere. Because
right.
I played the holy hell out of an Atari 2600 for a bunch of years there.
You had that adventure cartridge with that duck chasing you.
Yes. Not only that, but I have an Atari Flashback out here with me that has the adventure game on it with the duck chasing you.
Nice.
And the magic dot hidden off on the side room. And...
Oh, God almighty. Just stick a gun in my mouth.
So, what other magazines do you read at the time? I mean, do comic books count as magazines?
No.
Okay, then probably not much. So.
All right, good quiz.
All right. Not only do we have play-by-mail, we have enough play-by-mail that one company's got multiple of them.
Well, this we talked about them last episode. Schubel and Sons.
Yeah. Enough that we're taking up full-page ads in Dragon Magazine.
That'll tell you, kids.
Hey, look, we're still going on the tarot. They got a lot of miles out of this tarot article, man.
Well, like you said, this is a lot of effort.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Heck, yes. And we're still going. It's still going. Judges Guild is now expanding beyond just the City-State of the Invincible Overlord, and we're now on to Tarantus Campaign Map 4. So, one of the great entertainments that I had at at Gen Con 06, the one that I was actually there the whole time, I ended up, me, Zabek, Drummy, Mishler, and Bob Bledsaw from Judges Guild ended up getting schnockered together in a bar around the corner from the convention center, from the old convention center. And basically, is Bob holding court and the rest of us listening to tales of yore about the early days of Judges Guild. And it was easily in the top 5 all-time best $10 I've ever spent on beer. So it was a blast. Hey, metagaming stuff. Where were they selling metagaming in Wisconsin at the time? Here you go. Whoops. Stevens Point and Madison.
Neither of these stores is open.
You looked, didn't you? Or you just happen to know?
I happen to know. Wisconsin stores I got a pretty good handle on.
I will tell you this. The Hobbit in Fayetteville, North Carolina, on Yadkin Road, is still there.
All right, the Hobbit.
Not only that, it is in that exact location. It's still in 6111. And there was a good stretch of 2007, 8, 9 when I was down in Fayetteville for business reasons. I was working for a defense contractor. We were down there at least once a month, usually more frequently than that. And if I had the time, I made it a point to drive over to the Hobbit. And even if all I did was buy 2 dice, I would go spend a couple of bucks there just to help keep them in business. Just supporting the local game store because they've been there forever. I mean, this is 35 years later. The Hobbit's still not only in business, in the same place.
Much the same can be said, in fairness, for Games Plus at West Bussy Avenue, Mount Prospect, Illinois.
Yeah.
God bless you guys. Good friends of mine still run that shop.
I'm curious, out in California, so the game gallery I had been to at one point, it is no longer there. But I had actually been there at this point. Looking to see if there's any of these others that I know. Most of these are in Southern California. So these are mostly in the LA metro area. But Carmel, California, when we were living in Monterey, hit the game gallery. So I just kind of wanted to see if there were some places that I'd been along the way in here. What did they have for Virginia? Strategy and Fantasy World Falls Church. I don't know that they're still there now, but they were there into the 90s. I don't know that they were at that location, but Strategy and Fantasy World, at least a store with that name, was around into the 90s in Falls Church.
Awesome.
So, because I was there at some point. So, yeah. Cool. Harn Universe is worth the price. This was Roger Moore reviewing it, talking about detailed role-playing game universes, packaged as gaming aids, the Judges Guild universe of the city-states, the world of Greyhawk, Quest World, and Glorantha. You notice there's no mention of Forgotten Realms. We're still a couple years from Forgotten Realms.
I was going to say, we're not there yet.
We're a ways from it. So, yeah, we're not even remotely close to it yet. So... But yeah, they dug it. Here's our classified ads. Any of them in here jump out at you?
Well, we actually got a nice post from someone that is how they built their first dice tower.
Yeah, I think you mentioned that on a previous Dragon Up the Past cast.
Yeah, so there it is again. There's our dice tower ads. But where's the other one that I did look at? I did check that is not Clash of Arms that now does the Bataille series. It's a different company.
Yep.
The one that provides the complete elegant game of melee combat including 32 men, and an 11 by 17 paper board. I do love that.
I am curious on the rules for every conceivable magic spell.
That's a heck of a boast, isn't it?
Well, so here is why I'm curious about it. Because the role-playing game Duel makes much the same claim. And the role-playing game Duel, quite frankly, I think actually does it. Because the role-playing game Duel, every magic spell has one of 5 effects. And those 5 different effects are: you can raise or lower one of an opponent's stats. You can raise or lower your, some number of opponents' health. You can raise or lower one of your own stats, or raise or lower one of your own health stat, or you can move things from point A to point B.
Right.
And they actually put out a money-back guarantee on whether or not you could find any magic effect you wanted to create that you could not do it under their rules.
I didn't see that.
Because a fireball lowers your opponent's health stats. A lightning bolt lowers your opponent's health stats. A healing spell raises your health stat. If you want to move faster, that changes one of your stats. If you want to teleport, that moves something from point A to point B. And so when they talk about rules for every conceivable magic spell, I'm curious. Prove it. So.
Well, and I think too, though, that that is the argument at the end of the day, isn't it? That our friends at Savage Worlds make. They argue that so many of the things that we cherish in our role-playing games, as our, this is that spell and this is this spell, are really just variations on a theme.
Yeah. Yeah. What's the effect you're trying to create, not what is the mechanism you're going to use to create it.
Right. And dress it up however you like in whatever universe, whatever period you might choose. But at the end of the day, they're all the same.
Yeah.
You're either, like you say, you're doing damage. How are you doing that damage? Infinitely variable, but you're doing damage.
Yep. Asgard Minis. There's our index to advertisers. And send me copies of the publications indicated.
Awesome.
To include our Dragon Tales magazine. And there we go. The Star Frontiers. Going back to our head count of different games we'd played. I had played Star Frontiers at this point.
For sure.
No,
I think I've told the story that we commandeered a room in my high school, and we were determined to get this game to work as a Star Trek deck simulator. I can't, as I say actually in one of the show, in the show that I'm in, with indifferent success.
So what's new? We got Phil and Dixie doing their stuff. This one was pretty entertaining because of the ghosts. This was dealing with death in D&D and bringing out different kinds of ghosts. So there was some cute humor in there for the ghosts. This is every grog we've ever known. You know what I'd have done if I'd seen a girl like that when I was alive? I don't know. Me neither. So, Snarf Quest still going. Larry Elmore paid a lot of bills with Snarf Quest, man.
And I doubt he apologizes for exactly none of it.
Yeah, well, hey. It was a halfway entertaining story, and it was around for a long time. So, we hit our back cover here. Fellowship of the Ring on the back cover, and then we've got our King of the Tabletop markers. So, Dragon 77, folks.
Well, it's got. Let's face it. This is a little bit of a cheat. Let's not lie. That there was a little bit of a cheat, because at its heart is one of the great early games, as you say, in the 4X category, in the fantasy war game category.
Yep.
And quite a few others. But despite that, an enjoyable episode. Frankly, take Kings and Things out of it. Take King of the Tabletop out of it. And I very much like it, both for creative cursing and the Tarot of Many Things. As you said, a hard worked up episode and hard worked up issue, hard worked up articles, well worth reading.
Huzzah! As of this recording, we have no idea when we're going to get back around to this show. So this may be the end of it. At the worst, it's the end for now while we return to the Grogcast, and we will.
Hey, that's at the
best. And sooner or later, at some point, I'm sure we will revisit Dragging Up the Past and see what we can do with it.
Well, if we never see you again, let it be known it's fun, and there's a lot of great stuff in that old read.
Oh, heck yes. All right, so we'll sign this one off for now. Jim, thank you as always. This has been a lot of fun.
Always a pleasure.
All right, folks, we'll catch you later.